Hey everybody, BTO Pro here. Today I'm going to kind of start picking apart at this the demo site that I have, and hopefully by kind of peeling back and deleting stuff we can see how some of this stuff works. So for example, you have some things in here that say future and more. I'm just kind of trying to hit on the level of flexibility that this thing really has. So let's remove stuff. So this is the demo. You can find it in HAX-body. It's under demo. There's index.html. And hopefully if you piece through there, you can see that this is kind of not making a lot of assumptions about how you would use this. So you can see that there's these individual pieces of HAX imported. You got the store, which is basically the controlling brain of this little mini app, if you want to think of it that way. HAX body, which is effectively the wrapper for whatever this area is. Auto loader, which we'll go through in a sec. The manager, source definition, which is what lets us pull in and reference these things. The manager is this entire thing that just came up. So kind of, you're managing how to get more complex elements into it and managing the gizmos, things like that. And then there's export dialog. Export dialog is this button here, which then has all that contents in it with the buttons and whatnot. So you don't actually need an export dialog even. So if I look at export dialog, this is going to register and check in and say, hey, I'm the export dialog. But if I don't include it on the page, save, and refresh, then there's nothing there. There's also a flag associated with HAX body. If we look at HAX body, so if we look at HAX body and we look at the properties that this has, nope, sorry, it's on the panel. The panel has the properties of this. The panel, HAX-panel, can be put in edit mode. And then there's a button or a flag for hide export button. There's also a hide panel ops, which would eliminate buttons if you just wanted it to be totally off canvas. So what we can do is then go into HAX panel here, and then we can add in hide export button. So some of the definitions, there we go, there it disappeared. What we could also do, I was about to say, some of the examples that we showed along the way here don't have that button, and so that's how we achieve that, is putting that flag in. If you wanted to supply your own way of triggering that export dialog, well, I can still include the export dialog, but I could hide the export button, which is the initial thing to trigger it in the first place. As far as, let's go into this in the panel. Now the panel is able to do two-way data binding easily between the rest of the body. You could have other things trip this off. For example, when in the ELMS LN integration of this, you see the panel's not there and you can't see the little buttons, so we've got that tapped on, but it's actually, the edit mode is a just separate button triggering the same event, which then puts this into a content editable state, if you will, and then brings up the panel, which is slightly adjusted in theme, so that I can make my adjustments, duplicate content, what have you, and hit save. And so you see that button has effectively taken the place and utilized the events that are driven by this button in our little demo space. If I refresh the page on this other example here, I should have my two things to indicate that it's saved. So that's another area as far as flexibility. Let's attack this panel a bit more. We've got this more and this future. The future things have all been added, just based on utilizing the slot. So the slot of HAX panel lets you put whatever you want in there, and then basically I've taken that and said, okay, well, we're going to put in, these are called LRNSys collapse list item, and so we're going to put in another collapse item, which equals this. So you get the label future, and then the content in it, we're just going to dump in all these buttons. But if you want a simplified demo, I could easily take that out. It's also illustrating, hey, this is how you would get more of your own custom options in there, for example. Save. And now we don't have those additional ones. We have the more options, but we don't have these ones. So we look in previous screencasts, we've showed the HAX manager and stepped through adding a source. In fact, I built out a NASA, the NASA integration. But you could have none of these. In fact, so the media one is there as an example. So if I deleted that, and I deleted NASA, and I deleted Vimeo for that matter, now I just have HAX manager. And if I just have HAX manager then goes, well, there's nothing I can search for, but I can still work, right? And so we still have our gizmos. We have the ability to add something, which would then jump over to the gizmos. So we still have that behavioral pattern. I could do the CSV and it's still there, all that good stuff. But I think the biggest question I get is, okay, so we have CSV. That's nice. Like, okay, what other tags are you going to grace us with? And that's not really the point. It's not like, hey, can you add this one tag? So here's how these are showing up. And just to step through what the autoloader is. The autoloader is what's bringing those into scope. So if I get rid of these and save, we'll watch something go away. You can see that video went away. So there's no definition of that video web component anymore, the video player. And if I look in the Gizmo browser, there's nothing here. So I just took out all the definitions, right? We could easily put a version of HAX out that just has the ability to find stuff and then just has a video tag and says, this is the video tag. But it's not specific. You can see some of the other documentation videos. It's definitely not specific to the tags we're making here. So you can wire anything up to HAX so long as it's a custom element, web component. It doesn't even have to be Polymer based, although I'd probably wait until I make a video showing what it takes to make it without Polymer. It is possible to make a vanilla one, but I just don't want to. So we have all these different tags. So if you said, after the demo, you said, what, PDF element isn't ready for prime time, which it's not, it's still heavily in development. I don't have a need for Wikipedia. I don't really care about that amazingly impressive CSV thing. And we don't do anything with 3D or GIFs, right? If you just said, I'm only going to have audio and I'm going to have images and video, then you only need to include those. And now I only get those. I still get the ability if point or find a video, right? So if I find one and it has a way of presenting it, then it'll jump over and I can insert this video. And you notice the video showed back up because of the autoloader. What's going on with the autoloader is the autoloader is observing the items that are placed inside of it. If you look, there's nothing here. It's just, hey, I have elements. It's like nothing to the tag. But then when it loads up, it's looking at the things that have been placed inside of it, and then it's processing those things. And it's stepping through, and it's finding the tag name of each child inside of it, and then it's trying to resolve a relative URL to this page that should be the logical location for that HTML import. You don't have to use this method to import the reference and to get it to register, but it's a nice way of being able to, if you're from a CMS or some other solution that's injecting these, it's nice that you can actually dump them in that way just by loading them into this one area, and you print it onto the page, and then the page is going to unpack and it's going to load all those references. If loading the references failed and the definition of this just happens to be in the page, it should still work. I'll admit I haven't tried this yet, but let's take out video player for a second and we'll go up to where the HTML imports are and we'll just paste that in there. Save, and let's see if our video player still registers. So there's our video player. Nice. And it still registers on the Gizmo board. And there we go. There's our video player in the Gizmo board. So even though I didn't auto load it, I was still able to pull the definition. That's because the auto loader isn't actually responsible for registering with HAX. So all the autoloader is doing is just making it a little easier to just throw those things in there and then contextually load them. The thing that's actually registering with HAX is in the elements, the way you're supposed to construct them, in their attached callback, which in the life cycle of the DOM, this is like it's placed on the page, it's ready, it's good to go, and this is the very last thing that says, hey, this has been attached and is part of the DOM tree. In there, when you create an element and you wire it to HAX, you define your properties and you say set HAX properties. And so the act of setting HAX properties after you've defined, with our schema as far as what, how to edit and build a form out for this thing to do, color editing, responsive settings, whatever. It's utilizing what's called behaviors in Polymer, which is basically just take part of an element and append it here, and it's replicate its function. So you can see HAX behaviors, property behaviors. That is supplying this callback function of set HAX properties. And so if we look at HAX body behaviors, okay, and then we search for that function, you'll see HAX body behaviors is adding, there's going to be a HAX properties property, it's a little silly to say property twice, on every HAX capable element. And so it's it's read-only, so you can't just jump in and edit it. But calling set HAX properties is going to take that JSON schema that we passed in that matches the way that HAX settings work, and then it's going to validate it. So it's going to make sure that these things are in place, that there are reasonable defaults for some things, and then the important part is these two at the bottom. It's going to call a set HAX properties, which basically, the read-only forces you to use this internal private function method for calling it to set the properties value. But then it's going to fire up this event of HAX register properties. And HAX register properties is going to send along the information that you just plugged in that got validated by this behavior, and then a reference to the tag that fired this up. So in this case, it would be video-player. So video-player is going to bubble up, but where does it bubble up to? And if you're not familiar with event management and bubbling up property or bubbling down properties and sending up events for correct data flow, I suggest you look into that a little bit more. But if in the HAX store, which is one of the first tags mentioned as far as the imports, the HAX store. So you imagine there's this created lifecycle, and so for HAX store, this is, hey, this tag's about this tag has been made aware that it's a tag basically, and so it starts interfacing with the DOM and loading up and being registered as a full-on element. Well, created is really early on in this, and so what the created hook lifecycle hook is going to do is it's going to register a whole bunch of events with the highest level of the document. In this case, the body. And so it's going to say, hey, body, if you see anyone say that they have this event that they're firing, I want you to call this function. And so we can trace that function a little bit and see that it basically updates an internal element listing as well as an internal legitimate tags value, right? So that you can sanitize and say, well, I don't have a definition of Brian's cool video -tag. So if someone puts a Brian's cool video -tag into the DOM, it's not even a valid tag, so don't allow it. So that's kind of the relationship that's formed with HAX store and these kind of disconnected parts. If you want to think of HAX store as almost like the body, and then all of the arms and legs and different pieces that you're assembling on this body are loading in, but you don't really know when they're loading in. And it doesn't matter because of the way that this is driven with the event management system. So, even down to the body and the panel and sources. Sources have a very similar behavioral pattern to what I just illustrated here with HAX properties bubbling up and registering. The manager, the HAX manager tag, let's say you don't like our HAX manager tag, which does that the modal pop-up, which you can see it's just a big old paper dialog wrapper to get that pop-up, and it has the tabs on it, and it has certain events for when you tap on things. If you don't like that for whatever reason, you can actually go into your index, and if I took out HAX manager, so we illustrate with the other pieces, this could be like new cool HAX manager or something completely different, new cool manager or whatever. And then new cool manager, if we look in HAX Manager at its attached lifecycle, so long as your custom web component would fire HAX Register Manager and claim this, then it would be indicating to HAX, hey, this is the thing that's the manager. So whenever someone clicks or something calls for the manager to be visible, now I know that this is the one that I want to be visible. So by doing that, we've basically been able to have this kind of lazy registration, which I wanted to at least make note of because I think is an interesting design pattern as far as solving this problem. So, you know, all of these different pieces, the body, and in fact, this then it opens the door for, you know, someone asked us about the body being actually, like, can you have multiples? The same way you can have multiple CK editors on a page. And at the moment, no, architecturally you can't, because everything's back to, hey, give me the body. But it would, by using this mechanism, it would be really easy to have multiple HAX bodies on the page. They all fire up this event of HAX register body, which then calls this function. And right here, instead of saying this.HAX body equals e.detail, if this was more of a HAX.HAX body like that, and we push the new one on there, kind of a thing, which that's not the function. It would be like dot push or something, right? So if we pushed onto this array this value, and then maybe instead of this.HAX body, we had like this.active HAX body equals e.detail. Now we've got this, you know, state with the body. We've got a whole bunch of HAX bodies that are potentially the one in question. And now whenever HAX body becomes active, instead of referencing just the HAX body, we could reference the correct position in this array or something like that. That's kind of, you know, another advantage of this type of an approach. It's also, you know, as far as state management, this is a technique for state management effectively. So, you know, there's certain properties whenever they want to know about what's going on in the store, you know, or in the application as a whole, you don't know where everybody's connected, right? Because it's a thing to a thing to a thing to a thing, and you don't know if it's parent, 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 or parent of a child, child of a parent, sibling, any of those relationships. You don't know where they are in the DOM. And you don't know what their IDs are, and even if you did know what their IDs are, some things are in shadow DOM and that doesn't matter. So if we want to access something in the store and help maintain, you know, state across everything, we have a HAX store object, I believe. There we go. And so HAX store is off of the Polymer global in this case. And so we have polymer.HAX store, and then, you know, we could call functions off of that. Like in this case, this was a nice way to have like a global function, because there's a lot of things that are going to have to go node to HAX element and HAX element to node, which is a HAX element is kind of this little JSON array that represents an HTML DOM element, just so that you can transition it into that preview pane and things. So we can write a whole bunch of functions off of HAX store, like HAX store camel to dash, so that you can translate between camel case and dashed case, which is important when translating properties between HTML and JavaScript. HAX to node element, where you can have a very standard way of sanitizing these things, do it in one place. You know, kind of think of these like your global application settings and functions. And then anytime we want to update something in HAX, like even if it's on a manager, like if the manager wants to update whether or not it's active, in this case you can see active HAX element, which would be, you know, something in HAX Manager got clicked and now it's going to update. Oh, by the way, they hit insert, and when I'm about to insert this into the DOM type of a deal, instead of HAX Manager saying, hey, whatever random thing dot active element, you are now this. What this is doing is everyone that wants to write something that's configuration or global scope in nature fires or calls this function in the store, and then the store writes it for them. And so in this case, it's active HAX element. And if we look at our write function, we can see all it's doing is it's taking the object passed in. So the this, you always have this on in this call structure here. and it's going to do this dot fire HAX store write, the property that got passed in this case, it's the active HAX element, and then the value, and then in this case, it's going to be the HAX element in question, the fact that we're about to insert something into the DOM. So it's firing off this event, but it's firing it on behalf of HAX Manager, just so that we have a little more control over what writing is if we were to change this methodology. Well, as part of the created lifecycle callbacks, when we write data to the store, document.body add event listener HAX store write. So we actually have a write HAX store function that's in the store itself. It's a little weird. And so the write HAX store function, if you think of the hierarchy of this document, HAX store gets added into the DOM somewhere down here, but it tells the body, hey, if you see any events that talk about writing to me, you let me know. And so now when this other tag, when HAX Manager, which is checked in with the store and said, hey, I'm the manager, and when the manager says, hey, I want to insert something into the body of the document, it can fire that event up. The top level body says, oh, by the way, I'm supposed to run this function, write HAX store. And so write HAX store then does this.set property value. Now this is a convention in Polymer that's the equivalent of just doing the this dot, whatever that thing was I had before is the variable name, the HAX to node, or node active element. And so this just ensures that the data binding is set correctly. So this write HAX store function is effectively updating the property, right? I could have done some type of, kept a reference around as to what object in the DOM was HAX store, and then just done, HAX store object dot active element equals value. But that's going to get me out of management as far as state. That's mutating the state, so to speak. And so to avoid that, what we then do is, so if you think of this, this is the controlling brain that's been tapped, and then it's going to update the property, which was set by this nice global way at which we set these properties. It's brokering this conversation and updating itself in a structured way. Then it is going to fire, and the it in this case is HAX store. HAX store is going to fire an event, HAX store property updated. And so HAX store's property is going to bubble up, and HAX store property updated is going to bubble up. But what does it bubble up to? Well, all of the elements, if you've noticed this before, in their attached life cycle. So body does this as well for another example. So the attached life cycle of these different core pieces of HAX are all registering who they are. So this registers, hey, I'm the body, and manager registers, hey, I'm the manager, and panel registers, hey, I'm the panel. But then all three of them add to the top level, hey, if you see this event, I need you to run my update function. And so the store has been, we get this data flow where it's the panel or the manager or the body or anyone else says, hey, I have a change that needs to happen globally. That fires up from who knows where, gets captured at the body level, and redirects the message back to the store. The store then writes to itself and then fires an event that goes up to the body saying, hey, I updated properties, anyone care? Which then cascades back down to all the individual nodes in the DOM that care about that update. Then when they say, hey, I care about that update, if the property if the property name matches a property in this, then it sets it. And so basically we have, in the case of edit mode, we have a effectively global kind of tunnel to property that's shared in its state across all of the different things that would tap into this. And so if I update edit mode in the panel, I don't actually call an update edit mode in the panel. I'm going to have to bubble that up, right? So toggle, which would be that the panel has opened, will then fire up it will write to the store edit mode, and the opposite of whatever it is currently, which then trips off that whole thing that I mentioned before. But only the things that care about edit mode are going to notice that. So there is an edit mode property on HAX body And so because HAX body has this listener and because it has edit mode, its edit mode property will be kept in sync. Similarly, if we had active node, and if active node was located on panel, which it's not, then if something updated active node and bubbled that change up to the store to manipulate, like here, we could actually get active node reflected on HAX panel using this exact same methodology. So now, basically all I would have to do to create these synced kind of properties is just add that. And now that is going to update automatically whenever something changes the state of active node in the store. So that's kind of been stepping again through, another aspect of this. There's a ton of elements to HAX. One of the next areas that I'll be focusing on with HAX is specifically in the source tag. So the source tag is going to be split out into 2 elements at least. Michael Potter has also been doing some contributions to HAX, refactored the HAX source a little bit, so like search is optional and some other aspects of it are optional, and starting to work towards pagination of the data results that come in. But we're going to actually abstract HAX source into just a pure wiring component and then make like a HAX source search. And trying right now even to kind of come up with just a JSON object that's able to do and express all of the connections that would be needed for different CRUD operators, if you're familiar with CRUD, but naming them bread because someone passed along a really cool blog post that mentions the idea of bread as far as the operations you try to do. As far as browsing a resource, reading the resource, editing the resource, adding to the resource, or deleting from the resource. So we're kind of working on that aspect so that we can, as we move towards needing to build a little OAuth 2 credential management system to go along with this on the back end, we're going to be able to have a lot more flexibility in what these sources do. So for example, right now, I can go to my Gizmo browser and I can find a video on YouTube, and that's really stinking wonderful. But what if we had enough of the connection credentials and wiring in this, then when I go to Gizmos and I would drag and drop a file to upload it, then I would get a little share charm that would say, oh, that's a video. Do you want to put that on YouTube? And if I already had the connections, that I could just click YouTube and it would send it there. And then when it's done sending it there, it could jump over to Make Gizmo and do the same auto selection and populate the source here. So that you could really start to use and envision HAX as almost this remote control to your media and content repositories. That you don't need to go there. You can just leverage them as a backend is kind of what we're working towards next. Also working on some of the UI aspects. This was kind of thrown together at the time. So taking some design inspiration, probably from Medium or something to do more inline, cleaning up some of the little UX patterns between things, and then starting to work towards some of the blocks and the more complex layout concepts, which is what Nikki is working on right now as far as working on some grid system type of things, as well as the blocks and how they stack together, so that we can build more complex layouts in place. But yeah, if you have any questions about HAX, please feel free to let us know. I'm going to keep doing some of these screencasts to try and talk through what's going on with it, where we have it integrated, and as we push towards production usage.